Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Light It Up. This week's episode is actually a replay of an interview that I did 1 year ago with Dr. Robyn Gobin, licensed clinical psychologist, professor, and the author of the Self Care Prescription. I'm replaying this episode for a couple of reasons. First, I believe that all of us need to take time to incorporate self care in our lives. I, for one, am certainly guilty of not carving out the appropriate time to take care of myself. And I know I've shared this with you all on a couple of episodes this season. It's been a challenge for me. As a divorced mom of three teens, it's been very, very challenging to incorporate time to take care of myself because I put the needs of my children before my own. However, I am fully aware that I need to exercise self care in order to be present for my children. The second reason that I'm replaying the interview with Dr. Robyn Gobin is because she recently, in fact, today, released a new book, The Self Care Prescription Journal. And I was fortunate enough to receive an advance copy, and I've had an opportunity to actually sit down and do the work as outlined in the journal. So I hope that you will enjoy this episode and consider purchasing your copy of the Self Care Prescription and the Self Care Prescription Journal. You can find Dr. Gobin's books on Amazon if you so choose to uh, order your copy today. I hope this episode encourages you to begin to exercise self care and do the work necessary to thrive. Now, let's get ready to light it up. Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah Muhammad. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to tune in to Light It Up. If you are a returning listener, thank you so very much for choosing to tune in once again this week. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome to Light It Up. I hope that there is something shared with you today that you will find inspiring and something that can help you throughout the remainder of your week. Today, I am doing things just a little differently. If you tuned in last month, I launched my first Mom Boss episode where I had a special guest, social impact strategist, Kashana Island. So that was a great show, but I wanted to make sure that I'm bringing more relevant people onto the show so that you can hear what's going on and get some helpful tips. So this week, I am pleased to have another guest on the show. So this show is being broadcast via YouTube as well as Facebook, as well as, of course, on the podcast if you're listening. So if you want to view the episode, you can certainly select the link in the show notes, and then that way you can actually watch the interview. But as we are all practicing shelter in place and social distancing, I realize that some of us are having a very challenging time adjusting to what has now become this new normal. And because of that, I thought it was very important to bring someone on the show who can talk to us about managing through different situations, managing through experiences of depression or anxiety, or simply learning some simple tips to exercising self-care. So today's guest on the show is Dr. Robyn Gobin. Um, so thank you for joining me today for Light It Up.
Thank you for having me.
I am very excited about this episode because I have very special guest, Dr. Robyn Gobin. Dr. Gobin is a licensed clinical psychologist, mindfulness instructor, speaker, researcher, university professor, and the published author of The Self-Care Prescription: Powerful Solutions to Manage Stress, Reduce Anxiety, and Increase Well-Being. And you're also, right, the developer of the Transform You iPhone app.
Yes, yes.
So thank you again for joining me. I think it was about a year ago, actually, that we met.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long.
I
Time
know.
flies.
I know. And it's pretty interesting because we were both at a book launch event for Peace
Yes.
of Life. I'm not even really sure how we kind of hit it off and started talking.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, just kind of like energy, I think.
Yeah. And then I think we found out that we both had something in common because
Mhm.
we both work for the University of Illinois system.
Yep.
You're
Mhm.
down at Urbana, which everybody loves, and I'm at UIC.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring you on because I picked up your book, and I've been reading it. I kind of pick it up, put it down, and because it seems to be one of those books that you can kind of take it step by step.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and I know that with your background and your area of interest and expertise, primarily focuses on women, right?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And so, considering that we're in this new reality, everybody's in this shelter in place, it's a new reality for all of us. I wanted to bring you on because I know that this is new for everybody.
Yep.
And you're the expert. And so I just wanted to, to get some tips from you that we could share
Yep.
with people. So I guess first, just kind of jumping right in, maybe if you could talk about, I guess give some more of your background because
Mhm.
I did give a little bit of surface background information, but how did you navigate towards having an interest in women, I guess, as well?
Yeah, yeah. So my whole kind of interest in the field of psychology really came from me being in a family of women, watching the ways that we as Black women kind of make it through in life. Sometimes we are not okay, but we have to put on that face and keep going because we have so many responsibilities, we wear so many hats. And I just kind of said I wanted to be a light in the midst of that and to help people to carry the load with them and help them to see different ways that they can manage the stresses in their life and help them to understand the control that they can have over their destiny and over their situation despite challenging issues that come our way. And so that's really what led me into wanting to be a psychologist and wanting to do therapy and educate people, was helping them to see how much power and control they can have over bettering their lives. We don't have to wait on the sideline for things to magically get better. We have control based on how we respond to our emotions, how we behave. And so that's what I'm all about, is helping women to really maximize their fullest potential
Hmm.
and to take care of themselves at the same time.
Yeah.
Which where the idea for self-care came in, and that really came after I started working in therapy. My specialization is interpersonal trauma survivorship, and so helping people to overcome some of the most terrible experiences that they've had in their life, and work through that and process those experiences and come out on the other side.
Mhm.
um, and so, with that, I started to notice just how well ingrained a lot of women had that self care is selfish,
Mhm.
and that they should not take time for themselves, and that if they did, they would be taking away from their family or their jobs or other responsibilities that they have. And so, something in me was like, that's just not right.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
like, especially us as women in this country, how much work that we do and how many hats that we wear. We have to be seeing ourselves as valuable and seeing ourselves as worthy of our own time. A lot of times we think everybody else is worthy of our time, but not us. So I wanted to change the narrative around that. And also, I think self-care is a global kind of concern. Is something that anybody can benefit from. And so I wanted something, when I was thinking about writing the book, I was like, okay, let me think about something where it can be applicable to a general, a broad audience, but definitely tapping into women and the challenges that we have around taking care of ourselves. So that's really where that interest in self-care and in women came from. It stemmed from my childhood and just wanting to be a light and wanting to be a guide along this thing called life and help people navigate it a little bit with a bit more freedom and a bit more flexibility and joy.
I think that's awesome because I always, well, people talk about how, and you touched on it, how resilient women are,
Yeah.
particularly Black women, how we're strong for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, and, sometimes you say, you need to check on your strong friends.
You do.
And I know for myself, I'm a divorced mom. I have 3 teenagers.
Mhm.
I've been counting down. We've been in the house together for 19 days and trying to make the best of it. But I know for some people, even with my staff, for example, I have a
Mhm.
staff full of women.
Mhm.
And we have weekly check-ins, and I mandate that we do a video Zoom call
Good.
because, to have that personal interaction.
Mhm.
Um, so with this current time, with us having to shelter in place, like what strategies and tips can you give for folks who are trying to adjust just to make sure that they, are not sliding into, depression or anxiety, things of that nature?
Yeah, I think a huge piece to this while we're social distancing is to make sure that we're not isolating ourselves.
Mhm.
This time of uncertainty can bring up a lot of emotions for folks. So, a lot of feeling sad, a lot of feeling afraid, even feelings of rage. I've been hearing people talk about, which is totally understandable. And I think an important piece is allowing yourself to feel those emotions, but also to share those emotions with other people. Kind of have some positive people in your life who you can text or FaceTime or call at the drop of a dime, who will just listen to you vent and listen to your emotions and make space for your emotions. I think that's a huge piece. We fall into depression or just get numb when we start to reduce our feelings and when we try to kind of stuff them and numb them and do other things to get rid of them. But there needs to be just this openness and this acceptance of, this is how I feel right now, and it's okay. You don't have to like it, but you're better off when you accept those emotions for what they are. You allow yourself to feel them and to really see what the messages behind our emotions, because just from an evolutionary perspective, we have emotions for a reason. They
Right.
come to communicate things to us, to alert us to things that need our attention in our bodies or in our environments. And so I would encourage folks to make room for those emotions. Don't just try to get rid of them, make them different right away, but make room for them. Allow yourself to feel them. Sometimes you just need a good cry like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're frustrated and you don't know what else to do, that can be very cathartic, very cleansing. So allow yourself to feel those emotions, allow those emotions to do their work, and then confide in some folks who you can trust to share those emotions with and say, okay, this is what I'm going through, and then help, and then they can help you to move through those emotions. So to hear them, to validate them, and then they'll say, okay, what are we going to do to help you get out of this space so that you don't start to slip into, like you mentioned, a deep depression or deep anxiety. And also sometimes it might mean reaching out for therapeutic help. So our friends can be so only so helpful because of their training, right? And their friends. And so when we find ourselves in a place where we have been battling for a long period of time and we feel like we need that extra level of support, I would suggest reaching out to a therapist. And a lot of therapists, given what we're going through right now, are doing telehealth. So they are transitioning their practices online, and a lot of them had already been offering online services. So
Mhm.
I would encourage you to check with your healthcare insurance and see, because a lot of times a barrier to seeking therapy is that we think, oh, it's going to cost a lot of money, and but double check with your healthcare coverage, particularly now, because they are even making some guidance around allowing plans that maybe hadn't before covered telebehavioral health. Now they're covering it because they realize there's an enhanced need during this time of uncertainty. So check on that, and if you need more support from a professional, someone who's trained in knowing how to help you to move through a period of depression or move through anxiety, I would encourage you to definitely reach out. And I know that particularly in the Black community, there can be stigma around going to a therapist. You feel like I'm weak, or that means I'm crazy, like only crazy people go to therapy. I've heard people say this a lot, and that couldn't be further from the truth. My personal opinion is that everybody could benefit from a therapist. They are a trained person who's trained to help you walk through particular emotional challenges that you have. They can help you think through even relationship struggles that you have. And the great thing about a therapist is they are impartial, right? They only know you. So, and it's not, when you're talking to a friend, it's supposed to be kind of like a mutual exchange, a mutual supporting of each other. But the great thing about therapy is it's all about you. So you get all the attention, all the focus on you to really help you to move through the difficulties and challenges that you're having. And if you're human, you have difficulties and challenges, right? Like none of us are immune to feeling sad sometimes, feeling down, and getting stuck in life. And so why not, if you have this resource available to you of experts, just like you would go to a physician when your leg is broke, you wouldn't just kind of walk around and try to drag it around, because that wouldn't be effective. So it's the same thing with when you are feeling emotionally stuck or having challenges. Don't just try to kind of grit and bear it and put that. I know we all kind of have that S on our chest and we try to just keep going, but it wasn't meant for you to carry alone the burdens that we have. And like, we are social beings, and we were meant to rely on other people and to help lift other people up. So give that some thought. If you have that barrier in your mind around, like, people are gonna say something about me, they're gonna think something about me, or I'm gonna be perceived as crazy because I went to therapy. Just think about what's the cost that you're paying by not going to therapy, right? Like, because a lot of times we feel like we're doing okay and we can just keep it going, but what happens is that struggle that we have starts to seep into our relationship with our kids, where we are more irritable, we find ourselves yelling all the time, or a relationship with a partner or even coworkers. We're not showing up as the best version of ourselves when we don't take care of ourselves. And you might be fooling yourself thinking, I'll just drink all the coffee and to get my energy and I'll just show up and be good. But you're not giving the people in your life the best version of yourself if you don't take care of yourself. So that's a huge message that I preach everywhere I go to women. Like, it's not, self-care is not selfish, because other people benefit. When something's selfish, only you benefit. But when
Right.
you take care of yourself, everyone in your life benefits, because you show up as the best version of yourself, and you have energy and effort and creativity to give to them from the overflow. And so they're just not getting the leftovers, of your energy and of your attention. And so it's really important to think about that if that's been internalized, because I know that message is in society. So a lot of us may have internalized that we don't deserve it or it's selfish.
Right. And I'm so glad you touched on that, because seeking professional services,
Mhm.
has been taboo in the
Yep.
Black community.
Yep.
And I know I have gone to counseling.
Yep.
Currently, I go to counseling now. I mean, it's a different method. Um,
Mhm.
and And everybody knows it because I talk about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. And I realized like I need to be able to talk to somebody. And there were actually specific points in my life where I
Mhm.
sought counseling. The
Yeah.
first time was actually before I got married.
Yep.
I was in law school working full time and I was just overwhelmed with trying to plan a wedding.
Mhm.
The second time was when I was considering divorce.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then the third time actually was I returned in, I think, 2018. And that's when my partner, who I had been with for 5 years, he passed away suddenly.
Mhm.
And I've been going ever since. And then my dad passed away 8 months ago.
I'm
And
sorry.
so, thank you. Um, but what I noticed, because I'm so vocal about it, even with my children,
Yep.
they'll ask me, like, they know what day I go.
Mhm.
And if something just seems to be a little bit off where I'm a little bit more irritable, they're like, when is your session? um,
Go take care of yourself so you
yeah,
can be nicer
yeah,
to us.
exactly. But what's interesting is I actually had when my ex-husband and I actually went through our divorce and my children and I moved, I was trying to be proactive and I
Mhm.
put my children in therapy, but I think they actually ran rings around the therapist. So it wasn't, they went together. So it was kind of like a tag team.
Uh-huh.
So now, they'll say things like, "Oh, I don't need to go," but we talk about it. So they know that that's an available resource because
Yeah.
I don't want them to continue, that stigma or of thinking that something's wrong,
No.
if you go.
Yeah.
Um, and now I think because I've been vocal about it, people that I didn't expect to go to counseling, they've actually reached out to me and asked, how do I find a
Yep.
counselor? And I'm like, okay, if I can share my story with somebody for them to seek the help
Mhm.
that they need, then that's great. Um,
Yeah, I think
but
that's so beautiful. That's so
yeah.
beautiful. And I think that's the way that we remove the stigma, right? Is that we
Mhm.
share our story just informally, right? Just mentioning just that you go to a therapist can be so powerful to someone who just catches wind of that because they're like, oh, she's doing it, then I can, right? Then I can do it and it's okay for me. And that's the way that we can like have those little ripples in the ocean is when we kind of take care of ourselves. We unknowingly give other people the courage, right, to take
Mhm.
care of themselves. And I think that's beautiful.
Do you think that there's been maybe a shift, or where people are now being more open and willing?
I
And
think so. I
okay.
think so. Yeah. Especially with the way our society today, social media is big, right? And people pay attention to celebrities' lives, and so I think a huge piece of that is the portrayals of therapy on TV, like
Mhm.
in reality TV, for better or for worse. Some of them are better or more accurate portrayals than others,
Mhm.
but just that sense that people are saying, oh, this person has looks like me and they're going to see a therapist and they're actually getting some benefit from it. I think that has normalized it and started the
Mhm.
conversation in society where people are like, oh, okay, like I guess this is just a normal thing for people to do and even people like me to do. So I
Mhm.
think that there has been a shift. I think the stigma is still there. It's
Yeah.
still there in a lot of communities. And one of the ones that I've been really wanting to work through and target is in the Black church, like
Mhm.
in religious communities, because I think that there is a tension where people feel like, well, if I go to a therapist, then that means that I'm not trusting, you know, my higher power enough. Like I don't have strong enough faith or something's wrong with me. So they try to hide that. And I've even sat in churches and heard, preachers from the pulpit say, like, you don't need no therapist. You just need to trust God more. You just need to have more faith, or you need to read your Bible more. Just put on some worship music and that'll like kick you out of a depressed state. And that's just not the case. That that doesn't
Right.
work. And so I'm really big on trying to help people understand that
Mhm.
the church and religion and spirituality can work in conjunction with therapy, with psychology, and help you to be your best self. And so it doesn't have to be a either or, they can work together. And I know a lot of churches today are having starting mental health ministries, right, where they are providing services and counseling. And I think it's a huge deal when pastors and clergy kind of understand that they have an expertise, but they might not be as competent in therapy. Because I think a lot of times in our community, that's a place, if people aren't going to family members or friends for support, they'll go to a pastor or a religious leader. And I think the religious leaders have to kind of check in with themselves to make sure that they are competent to be able to provide mental health services. And when something crosses the line from being spiritual guidance to being like mental health guidance, and if you're someone who doesn't feel like you have the knowledge, the expertise, then not being afraid as a clergy, as someone who's respected in the church, to refer someone to a therapist and to suggest that someone go to a therapist. I think that can be super powerful, because there is pastors have so much power in the church and people respect them, and they hear someone with that is so respected to say it's okay to go to a therapist, I think could do even more to propel us forward with this idea of breaking down the stigma.
Agreed, agreed. I know we are, kind of pressed for time too, because we're both, doing multiple things. So I'll just want to ask a few more questions, because I had a few folks who, when I told them I was going to be interviewing you, they had questions.
Oh, good.
Um, so if you could just maybe talk a little bit about depression, I guess, from the standpoint, so for someone who has experienced maybe job loss as well as an illness, a life, um, altering illness, like what can they do to, well, first of all, what are the signs that,
Mm,
family or friends should look out for if you know that someone, has experienced just some challenging times? What are some signs that you should look out for, to determine whether or not someone could possibly be suffering from depression? And then what should that individual do? And,
yeah, so that's a great question. So some of the signs that someone may be struggling with depression is, of course, kind of being more sad, being more down, um, uh, just in their mood. And sometimes for folks, what it can look like is being more irritable. So that sometimes it's not as sad and gloomy or doomed, but it's more of being irritable in relationships, being quick to lash out. That's something that you can look for. Also, the isolation piece, isolating yourself from people that you used to kind of hang out with a lot more. Also, not engaging in hobbies that you used to find pleasurable. So stepping away. So if someone used to, always be at church every Sunday, and now like they are, not at church, and they, every time you talk to them, is something else has come up, kind of check out, okay, what's going on? Because that's one of the signs of depression, is people no longer get pleasure out of the things that used to bring them pleasure, and so they stop engaging in those activities. So that's another thing. Sleep is often impacted when someone's dealing with depression. So what we see often is that people are able to sleep for hours and hours and hours on end and still don't feel rested, still don't feel like they have any energy. Or the opposite can happen, where people are waking up much earlier than they want to in the morning, not able to fall to sleep at night, and just not getting very restful sleep. They may be sleeping some hours, but not getting restful sleep. Also, difficulty concentrating. That's a huge symptom sometimes of depression, where people just find it hard to make decisions. They find it hard to concentrate, to focus on one thing at a time. Also, your view of yourself is often impacted when you're depressed. So you look at yourself as maybe unworthy of things. You might feel a lot of guilt about things that you've done in the past, or ways that you've used your time, just kind of really being hard on yourself and being super critical of yourself. And also sometimes feeling hopeless about the future, feeling like this will never change. I'll always feel this way. I'll always kind of be a failure or a loser. And so having that kind of perspective, that it's not just I feel this way now. If you can kind of see a future for yourself, that's a positive sign. But if you get to a space where you don't even see it changing, you think you're going to be this way forever, and you don't even think you deserve a brighter future, then that is also a sign that maybe someone's dealing with depression. And of course, the thing that's really important to remember with depression is that this is kind of like feeling this way for a prolonged period of time and having all of these symptoms all at once, right? So all of us maybe can relate to having days when we feel a little sad, or at times when we're hard on ourselves, the inner critic starts to roar up and we are just feeling really bad about ourselves. But the key with depression is that it's kind of like this persistent pattern, that no matter what you do, it feels like it's just intensified and it doesn't go away. Another thing I would be remiss if I didn't say about depression is sometimes having thoughts that you would be better off dead. Sometimes people cope, and it's actually a way of coping. People think I'm in so much emotional pain. I feel so sad, so down, so terrible about myself. Almost, I feel like a burden. And so the way that sometimes people think that I can give myself some relief is to just not be here anymore. If I can just go to sleep and just never wake up again, I don't have to feel the pain. And so I think that's really important. I wanted to say that because it can sometimes be a normal part of depression. And also it is something that we want to be sure to support people around and try to understand. Because I think in our society we have we have a negative connotation with that, and we kind of hop on people and say you should never feel that way. But if you think about it, if you were in excruciating pain and it felt like it was never going to go away, that might be somewhere your mind might go, right? And so we don't want people to stay there, but we do want to be able to empathize and sympathize with, you must be in so much pain and I understand why you feel that way, and let's get you some support and some help because we want you to stay here, we want you to stay alive. And so how can we support you and help you and move you to a place where you do feel like your life has meaning and you do kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And so I think then if someone's finding them, if they're seeing themselves reflected in these symptoms, I think an important thing to do is, again, reach out for support, right? Talk to someone in your family, talk to a friend, tell them how you're feeling, or call and reach out for support from a therapist. It really is important to make sure that you don't go in isolation with these symptoms, right? Because they thrive in isolation and they just build on each other, and it can intensify and get worse. So the more you isolate, the worse off you are. The more you reach out for help, even though it can take a lot of energy and it can feel counterintuitive because you might have this facade that you want to keep putting up, that I'm doing good, I'm doing well, I'm strong, I'm capable. But again, remember what I said earlier is that we all need support. We were born as social beings and we need that support, whether it's professional support or informal support from family or friends. So I would say reach out. If you feel like you're not in a place to reach out, I would suggest maybe starting with some self-help books. You can look on Amazon. If you just Google depression or on Amazon and put in that as a search term, depression self-help books, look at some books and see what ones might kind of speak to you. Again, I think that's not a substitute for therapy, and it's not going to be as powerful or as effective as therapy would be. But if you need to kind of take steps, and if that's a step you're willing to take, getting a self-help book. Another thing that I know, there's a lot of apps out there that you could use that you do a mood check on the app, and it will ask you what your mood is like and actually give you different strategies or different suggestions with regard to what you can do to help improve your mood or how you can cope with feeling sad or feeling down. And so that can be, again, another initial step. I would still say therapy is, again, going to be the most effective, but that's an initial step. Another thing that people sometimes find useful is to, if you have a primary care provider, sometimes people will talk to their primary care provider about their symptoms and they'll be prescribed an antidepressant. And so some people prefer that. And so I would say that that's another option if you feel like you need something to help give you the energy to maybe engage in therapy, that may be starting with talking to your primary care provider so they can provide you with a referral to a psychiatrist, or sometimes they will prescribe something that you can take. But again, I think therapy is my number one suggestion, just because it helps you to kind of get to the bottom of, how did I get here? What are my triggers? What's contributing to me feeling this way? And then give you some tangible strategies for how you can move forward and cope effectively with these symptoms, because sadness will come again, right? That's a part of the human experience. We experience joy, we experience pain, and we need those skills to help us to be able to cope when those times come. And that's what therapy gives you. The idea is that by the time you're finished working with your therapist, you can become your own therapist and help pull yourself out of these tough times. And so you want to get that support.
Yeah. Well, before we close,
Yeah.
because I know, but I just want to make sure. So I've got your book. And you see, I got my bookmark in here, but I really love the way, first of all, I love all of the color coding. Um, but just if we could close on this note as far as self-care, because you hear so many people talking about practice self-care, if you could just kind of give tidbits on what does self-care really look like, because a lot of times people think, oh, it's getting your hair done or your nails done, but there are some ways that we can actually practice self-care even while we're at home sheltering in place. So if you could just
Definitely, yes. So, my definition for what self-care is doing things that help you to feel healthy, happy, and effective in your life. And the main word is you. So doing things for yourself that help you feel happy, healthy, and effective in your life. And so self-care does not have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to cost a bunch of money. I know that that is what often is portrayed in media and told us we need to, treat ourselves by going to extravagant dinner or getting our nails done. But it doesn't have to look like that. Self-care can look like taking a walk. Self-care can be, playing your favorite song and actually sitting back and listening to it. It can look like snuggling on the couch with your pet or your kids. Like, that's what self-care is about: fueling yourself, nurturing yourself, your spirit and your body, so that you can show up to be the best version of yourself. So I challenge you to think about self-care is, okay, those three pieces: healthy, happy, effective in my life. What do I need to be happy, healthy, and effective? And how can I deposit that into myself? And another thing I'll say about self-care too is it doesn't have to take a bunch of time. I think that's another myth. People feel like it's just, my to-do list is already long enough. I can't put another thing on it. I don't have time for self-care. It sounds nice, but I don't have time for it. And my response to that would be, do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 3 minutes, right? Even just taking 3 minutes when you get out of bed to just take some deep breaths, or just to stretch and be with yourself and collect yourself and your body, or to be in prayer, or to practice yoga, something that kind of sets you to feel connected, to feel ready to go, but fuels you and pours back into you. Because again, the quote says you can't pour from an empty cup, but I would argue a lot of people do pour from empty cups, but you're not giving people, again, the best version of yourself, and your energy is going to tap out. You're going to be more prone to burnout. You're going to be more prone to feeling overwhelmed. And so the idea is just deposit into yourself, what do I need to be the best version of myself? And if people are looking for places to start, one of my favorite is sleep. Are you getting sleep? Because we like to hustle. We like to try to get as much done as we can with the 24 hours that we're given in each day. But rest is just as important as movement. Like we know the body needs exercise and movement to function at its best, but it also needs rest. And so what is the quality of your sleep, and what can you do to help enhance the quality of your sleep, whether that's getting more hours of sleep or whether that's setting boundaries around bedtime, like turning off the TV, turning off social media at a certain time so that you lessen the sensory stimulation that you're getting, right? Looking at computer screens, looking at our cell phones, that is all this energy and all this sensory information into our brains, and it makes our brains be more active. But right when we want to go to sleep, we want to calm the brain down and give the brain signals that it's time to go to bed. One of those signals can be turning the phone off so that your brain says, okay, I'm not getting that bright light, I'm not getting that stimulation, and maybe even taking a warm bath to wind yourself down, or drinking a warm cup of tea at night to kind of calm your body and let it know that it's time for rest. So thinking about your bedtime routine, and do you have a routine? And if not, try one on for a change, and just seeing what works for you. The other piece that I'll leave you with self-care is that it's very individualized. So what works for one person might not work for another person. And that's why I set the book up in the way that I did. It's not cookie cutter. It's not do this and then that self-care. It's guiding you to kind of get in tune with you and your values, what's important to you in your life, and then to develop an individualized self-care plan that really works for your life. Even if you're busy, it can help you to do it in a way that's sustainable for you. Because really, with self-care, you start to feel the benefits when you're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency is key. So just like if you're in the gym and you're trying to build muscle, the first time you go work out, you maybe don't feel anything. Maybe you feel a little bit of pain because you worked some muscles that you didn't even know you had. But when you look in the mirror, your arm looks the same, right? But if you continue, right, consistently going and working towards building this muscle over time, you look a month I've been working out, or 2 months or 3 months, look at that muscle is starting to form. And that's the same thing with self-care. So that's the kind of gift and the curse of self-care, is like it doesn't necessarily have immediate payoffs. Like if you do something for yourself, like if you go get your nails done, you feel like, oh, I see the pretty color, so now I feel better. But with self-care, like if I got a good night's sleep last night, I don't really see the benefit or payoff right away. But over time, if I continue to do that, I'll see that I'm feeling more rested, I'm feeling more awake during my day, and I can function better. So it's really about the long haul. So it's not about having long periods of time engaged in self-care, but rather the consistency with your self-care. That's really where you're going to see the benefit.
Wow, that is actually a perfect way, I think, to end this segment. I would really appreciate it if you could come back again.
Oh, definitely.
I
I'd
feel
love
like
to.
we only touched the tip of the iceberg because there are so many other questions that I have for you. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
before we go,
Yeah.
if you could just share with folks, I don't know, website or social
Yeah,
media handle.
definitely. Yep. So I am on all social media platforms at Dr. Robyn Gobin, Dr. ROBYN GOBIN. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm just getting on Twitter, so be
Yeah.
patient with me there. But I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. My website is www.robyngobin.com. And if you're interested in the self-care prescription, that is available on Amazon. It's also in Barnes and Noble stores, even though right now we're not going to stores. So you can pick it up. You can pick it up online. And I'd love to hear from you. If you get the book, shout me out on Facebook or Instagram. And if you have any questions about self-care, I always love to have these conversations. I know that it's not simple to implement self-care into your life, especially when you're busy and you have a lot of other competing demands. And so I really get a lot of joy from helping people to kind of figure out, how do I fit this into my life in a meaningful and sustainable way. So definitely feel free to hit me up, private message me on Facebook, DM me on Instagram, and we can have a conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will be talking to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank
All right.
you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye. I hope you all enjoyed Dr. Robyn as much as I did. And I also hope that you found some of the information that she shared with us today to be very insightful, and hopefully you'll be able to use some of the tips that she provided in today's show as you continue to navigate this new space. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to send me a message and I'll make sure that I respond to you. Also, if you have any ideas on who you'd like to see on the next episode of Light It Up, as I bring on special guests, feel free to send me a message. You can always connect with me on social media using the handle at Light It Up Podcast, or you can send me an email. My email address is draginah at aginahmuhammad.com. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of the week. And until next time, remember to light it up and shine bright like a diamond. To connect with Dr. Robyn Gobin, clinical licensed psychologist and author of the Self-Care Prescription, visit her website at www.robingobin.com. You can also connect with Dr. Gobin via social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter using the handle at Dr. Robyn Gobin. Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle at Light It Up Podcasts. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.